Africa's antelopes. The body is a reddish brown color with white hair inside the ears and a narrow black line that runs along the middle of the lower thigh. The impala is rarely seen on its own. Females and young animals form herds of up to 100 individuals, while males live in a bachelor group of about 60 animals. They occupy a large range and make seasonal migrations from high to lower ground according to the availability of suitable food. The impala can clear formidable obstacles and run at speeds faster than 40 miles per hour. Male impalas produce a scent from a gland on their foreheads to advertise their status to rivals. When he loses his rank, a male produces less scent. Males will fight for status and territory throughout the mating season using their antlers as weapons. But what is interesting about these amazing creatures is not its beautification or its astonishing speed. What is interesting about the impala is that the African impala can jump to heights over 10 feet and cover a distance of greater than 30 feet. However, these beautiful, speedy, high-jumping creatures can be enclosed in zoos across the world with only a 3-foot wall blocking their way. You would think this creature would simply jump over the wall to be released from their bondage, but the impala does not jump simply because the African impala does not jump without the knowledge of where their feet will fall. Here in Numbers, we are dealing with a people who have adopted this kind of mindset. The children of Israel are in position of being physically freed from slavery in Egypt, but mentally they are still enslaved. God has directed his people from the first few volumes of the Bible with the leading of Moses and Aaron through obstacle after obstacle, and now they are being prepared to go to the very place God had promised to them. So here in Numbers, God has put in place a system of organization, cleansing, and assignment. Then we embark upon Numbers 13, where God tells Moses and Aaron to send spies to the land of Canaan. Moses assigns 12 spies to search the land and see if this land is good or bad, and if the people among the land are strong or weak. The spies go out for 40 days, and the spies search the land. While the 40 days passed by, I could imagine the excitement of the people of God building up as each day goes by. Because for the first time in their lives, they are closer than ever to the hope that they heard their great-grandparents and their grandparents preach about, how the Lord was preparing a land for them. I could see, if you envision with me, I could see men walking to work with their heads high and their chests sticking out as they report to their boss that I'm putting in my 2-week notice for there's some land I must occupy. I could see the young people of Israel Snapchatting and Instagramming photos of them packing up their tents, posting tweets like, my last days in the wilderness. Hashtag turn up in Canaan land. I could hear the celebration parties and festivals as they jump around singing, I love God. Oh, you don't love God? What's wrong with you? But the Israelites are excited. See, they are about to obtain this land that's promised to them. And on the 41st day, I could imagine that many of God's people woke up that morning and began to check their Facebook to see if Moses has updated his status to say that the spies have returned. And as the news spread throughout the land, the spies have indeed returned. The people begin to flock together at the appointed location to hear the great news that the land is ready to be occupied. But the Bible says that 10 of the spies gave a discouraging word. They proclaimed that the land is good It is a land that is filled with milk and honey. However, the persons that populate the land are that of giants, and they are strong. Not only are they strong, but also we are as of grasshoppers to them. But in the midst of this demoralizing word, two other spies that make up the 12 of them, Joshua and Caleb, spoke with a different attitude. Caleb interrupts the report and proclaims that we can occupy the land, for we are able to overcome it. But quickly another spy rebuttals what he had just previously claimed and says these giants will devour us. This is what transitions us into Numbers 14. And this is where I want to assemble your attention to. In response to a bad report, the people of Israel are derailed from their excitement of receiving this land. And in response, or in result, they start to argue, fuss, and insist that they were fooled by God. They are so disoriented that they decide that they wanted to go back to Egypt, and even go as far as to put out a nomination for a new leader who would take them back to the Egyptians. At this point, Joshua and Caleb interrupts again with a message stating that this land that we passed was a good land that flows with milk and honey, and we can take this land because God promised it to us. If he promised this land to us, then we must not fear for what is in front of us. It's amazing to me that when I look at this story, I see 12 spies that look at the same land but come back with two different reports. Isn't it interesting how even in our own lives, we can go to the same land and come back with two different reports? We can go to the same church and one would proclaim how the word was proclaimed with power. I was blessed by the pastor. And then another would come and say, I don't know what the pastor was talking about. I've never seen that in the Bible. We can go to the same game and root for the same Cowboys and come back with two different reports. One would say, oh, I'm so glad Dez Bryant caught the winning touchdown at the end of the game, while another would say, but Tony Romo threw 3 interceptions. It's amazing to me that we can go watch the same news stations and see how a black boy named Freddie Gray was illegally stopped by police, curled up like a curly fry, dragged into a van alive, and came out dead. And one person would say, this is injustice. The church needs to be in the street. The church needs to say something, while another would say, let God handle that. We need to make sure these skirts aren't too high. We need to make sure these drums aren't too loud. We need to hold up our church standards. It's amazing to me that we go to the same land and come back with two different reports. So a question that popped up in my head when I was going over this story is, how can Moses send these spies to see the same land where they see the same people, the same fruit, the same walls, but come back with two different reports? And God told me it's simple. 10 of the spies wrote their report through the operation of sight, whereas Joshua and Caleb wrote their report through the operation of vision. See, there's a dynamic presented here in Numbers 13 and 14. See, what I've realized is that there is a battle between facts and faith. And can I tell the truth today? God wanted me to tell you that many of us are unable to reach our promised lands that God has prepared for us simply because we write our reports through the operation of what we see. See, sight is the faculty or power of seeing. It's a thing that one sees and that can be seen. See, sight makes things factual. The old saying says, what you see is what you get. Sight operates solely on presenting what is obviously there. But vision is an experience. It's an image. See, vision is the context of taking what you see and putting it into your frame. Oh, y'all don't understand? See, there's a program called Photoshop. And what Photoshop does is it permits you to take a photo and put it into the framework of that program and allows you to enhance what you see. You can brighten up a cloudy sky in Photoshop. You can take bumps and scratches off your face in Photoshop. You can even take off that excess weight you dislike in your photos on Photoshop. See, essentially what Photoshop does is that it provides the tools to allow what you see to become what you envision. I wish I was talking to church folk. And what I'm trying to tell you today is that too many of us look at our situations and are unable to enter our promised land simply because we operate through the facts in our situation rather than operating through our faith. See, faith photoshops your situation. It provides the tools to take what you see and transforms it into what you envision. I know that job's getting on your nerves, and what you see is a terrible job, but what God envisions is the experience you are gaining to help you get the job he has waiting for you. I know you had some bad breakups, and what you see is an old, bitter individual that has no man or no woman. But God envisions that through your pain, you'll be prepared for who he has waiting on you. I know you're sick and you can't get well, and what you see is the pathway to your death. But what God envisions is your testimony of how the Lord brought you out. Because faith photoshops what you see and transforms it into what you envision. Now, I know some of you are saying that sounds real good, but at the end of the day, I still need to know how to implement this in my life. So the question must be asked, how do we eradicate sight and activate vision? The first point is stop reminiscing over past and start preparing for promise. See, what is interesting to me is that as soon as the Israelites were given a bad report, the first thing they did was reminisce about Egypt. The Israelites were so enslaved mentally that the moment they received discouraging words, they were ready to head back to Egypt. And what activates this craving to go back to Egypt is that they were used to Egyptian life. See, the problem that they had were they were so used to how Egypt was that they could not envision anything better. And the truth of the matter is that many of us could taste the promised land if we weren't craving so much of Egypt. But one thing I'm learning about God is that in order to prepare you for promise, God has to make you uncomfortable with your past. See, too many of us are so shackled by our past that we're unable to welcome promise. I know there's some past issues in your life that you have been unable to let go, but I submit to you that if you continue to allow your past to dictate your present, then you will never be acceptable to promise. And the truth of the matter is, you might not be acceptable to promise not because you don't want it, but you might be unacceptable towards it because, like the Israelites, their past blinded them from understanding that the promise was theirs in the first place. And one thing I noticed about the text is that while Israel is looking back at Egypt, there are giants occupying their land. Oh, y'all not hearing me? May I submit to you that the more you are focused on your Egypt and unable to comprehend the promised land, the longer someone else will occupy your land? Oh, y'all don't hear me? See, too many of us are caught up in our past that we don't even realize that while you're stuck on past, someone else is taking care of your land. Oh, let me bring it home. See, while you're stuck on your ex-man, someone else is taking care of your next man. While you complaining about your last job, someone else is working your next job. While you don't have faith in God now, someone else is exemplifying that faith and accessing your blessings. See, while you're stuck on the past, someone has to take care of the land. And in result, God will make you uncomfortable in the very thing that is holding you down. In order to teach you that money is not the goal, God permits you to lose that job. In order to help you learn that God is the joy and the strength of your life, God allows that cancer to hit your body. In order to stop you from feeling yourself, God has to expose you sometimes. See, God is trying to help you eliminate what makes you comfortable so that you can prepare for promise. And in order to prepare for promise, one has to trust God no matter how impossible the situation seems. My wife is a beautiful human being, and I love her so much. She's so compassionate and loving towards individuals. She'll give up herself for other people, and I would love to take that from her for myself. But one thing I would let her keep is that she cannot see worth nothing. See, my wife, she has glasses on, but she's blind. And I know I got glasses on, but I can see way better than she can. And in result, she wears glasses, right? But I've also seen her in contacts. And what is interesting is that she prefers wearing contacts. But because of the cost of the contacts, she settles for wearing glasses. So I looked up this. And I found out that contact lens prescriptions and eyeglass lens prescriptions are not the same. They are significantly different because eyeglass lenses are positioned approximately 12 millimeters from your eyes, whereas contact lenses rest directly on the surface of your eyes. Like an eyeglass lens prescription, a contact lens prescription includes the lens power required to correct your refractive error. But depending on the degree of your refractive error and the type of contacts prescribed, the power specified on your contact lens may be significantly different than those on your glasses prescription to give you the best possible vision. See, what glasses does is that it allows you to see based on the location of its position. But contacts are rested directly on the surface of your disposition, which allows you to see no matter where your location of your eyes may go. Because wherever your eyes go, your contacts move with it. Oh, y'all not hearing me? See, the problem with many of us in our situations is that we are using the glasses of past, which allows you only to see based on the position you're in. But when you put on the contacts of faith, wherever you look, all you see is faith in your situation. But the obstacle we have to realize is that we must stop settling for glasses just because contacts cost too much. See, contacts of faith might cause you to give up some things. Contacts of faith might cause you to suffer sometimes. Contacts of faith might cause you to be vulnerable at times. Contacts of faith might cause you to give up your will and submit to God's will. See, the Israelites knew the land was good, but it cost too much to put on the contacts of faith and trust God. See, what I'm trying to tell you is that your past cannot introduce you to promise. God has some plans for your life, but if you are constantly looking back at what makes you comfortable, you will never reach the place of being sustainable in Christ. See, I know you're mad at God because you're still in the same place you were last time, and you know God promised you better. But what God is trying to show you is that you can't envision promise if all you see is past. And what is crazy is that some of us could be on the very brink of your promised land. But because you're so focused on past, you prolong the possibility of obtaining what is promised to you. You have to realize that you can't turn back because things don't work out the way you wanted it to. God has a plan for your life, but you need to activate the faith to access vision. Stop cheating yourself by being complacent in what makes you feel comfortable. God requires visionaries to lead people into the promised land. So in order to eradicate sight and activate vision, you must first stop reminiscing over past and prepare for promise. But secondly, in my last point, you must stop looking at the problem and start utilizing the power. What we see here in Numbers 14 is the contrast report to what we see in Numbers 13. See, the facts of both reports are accurate. But one report adds an element to the circumstance. See, while the 10 spies in chapter 13 focuses on the problem, Joshua and Caleb focuses on the power. See, the issue with the 10 spies report is that by operating through the avenue of sight, they could only report what they saw. Y'all not hearing me? And what they saw were giants that occupied the land, and they were strong and made the Israelites seem as grasshoppers. And unfortunately, they were right. But always remember this. When you can only report what's in front of you, you can only remember what you see. What you mean, preacher? See, the only reason they were reporting is because they were sent by God, who had previously already told them the land was theirs. See, one thing you have to understand is that you can't focus on what you see. You have to focus on what God says. If God said it, then I believe it. And the problem many of us have is that once we see the situation, we forget what is said. So these spies come back with a report that focuses on the problem based on what they saw. But catch this. What is interesting to me is that Joshua and Caleb recognizes the problem. I said what is interesting to me is that Joshua and Caleb recognizes the problem. The 10 spies see the problem. Joshua and Caleb recognizes the problem. And there is indeed a difference between recognizing and seeing. See, when you see something, it gives the assumption that this is the first time you come in contact with it. But when you recognize something, it gives the assumption that you've seen this before. Amen, pews. See, the 10 spies could only report what they saw, but Joshua and Caleb recognized this problem. And the problem with many of us is that we see too many of our problems rather than recognizing that this is just the devil in a different dress. This is the devil with a different problem. This is just the devil with a different attack on us. And if we would just recognize that this is just the devil in a different form, I would just encourage you to look back on what God did for you before and tell Satan, I have a lawyer already on this case. Here's his card. His name is Jesus Christ. He kicked you out before, and he'll do the same thing again because I recognize you, Satan. See, Joshua and Caleb sees the obstacle, but instead of moping about the problem, they utilize the power. See, their mindset in this land is understanding that this land is promised to us. And if the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into the land. In other words, if the Lord has already told us it's ours, then it must be ours. And the truth of the matter is, we need to stop acting in a certain way towards our situations, but change our attitude towards our situation. Instead of proclaiming and highlighting our problems, we need to proclaim and highlight his power. I wish I was talking to somebody in here. Y'all mighty quiet today. See, the facts in your situation shows you the problem, but your faith in the situation shows you his power. See, I recognize your problems are bigger than you. I recognize your bills are bigger than your pay. I recognize that breakup is bigger than your sanity. I recognize those student loans are bigger than your scholarships. I recognize that job is bigger than your degree. But I know that my God is bigger than all my problems. I know my God has all power in his hands. I know my God shall supply all my needs according to his riches in glory. The old song says, what a mighty God we serve. Angels bow before him. Heaven and earth adore him. You might have a problem that's bigger than you. But like Joshua and Caleb, his power is bigger than your problem.